both the special meeting and the continuation from December 13th. So if I can get Supervisor Gonzalez to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get also an acknowledgement, a certificate of posting.
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll start first with the hospital item, since I know there's very eager folks to talk about that item. So CAO Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite up Dulce Alonso. She'll be presenting this item with regards to the actual request and the temporary transfer per government code, Article 16, Section 6 of the state constitution.
All right, so give me 1 second, let me. All right, so good morning, board members and members of the public. So with this item, we're gonna, it has five elements to it. And I'll just go over all of them and all the attachments. So one is to continue the discussion of Hazel Hawkins and the Hazel Hawkins San Benito Healthcare District current physical status. The second one is consider adopting a resolution. And attached, we have in the back also, we have two proposed resolutions. One is with interest and one would be without. So that's for your consideration on which option we choose to move forward. The third recommendation is also, if the board desires, we could also, Barbara passed out the temporary transfer agreement.
Yep.
And if the board desires, typically on these matters, we receive a formal request, typically from the board of each district making the request. However, we're under different circumstances with this one, and we haven't received a formal request from the entire board. So if desired, we have a proposed agreement we could move forward with. Their board would have to take action after the fact, but our board would agree to temporary transfer agreement. And then the fourth, staff would like direction if you would like us to spend time on doing a feasibility of a loan not to exceed 10 million, and if so, authorize staff to seek legal advice on bankruptcy and a financial, and also to get advice from a financial consultant that the county chooses to move forward with, and delegate authority to our CEO to execute any necessary agreements with county council's approval. So that kind of sums up that item and all the requests before you today.
Okay. Well, since this is technically a different item, I believe we have some public comment, so I'd like to go to the public for comment.
Members in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press *9 or the raise your hand icon. We have Mary Casillas.
Good morning, Mary Casillas, Central. Good morning.
Mary Casillas, Interim CEO from Hazel Hawkins. Thank you for continuing this for today and understanding the emergent need for the hospital. I wanted to just bring up a couple concerns, and I thank you for your thoughtful questions on Tuesday, and want to play out a couple concerns that were brought up. When we talked about the health and safety of San Benito County being on the Board of Supervisors, one thing I want to play out, because I assume the comment that was made was fire and police, and I get that. I assume EMS was also included in that, since that's the responsibility of the board. Let's just play out the worst case scenario. And I want to be clear, this is something we are working very hard to avoid, but let's say the hospital closes. Typically what happens when there's a 911 call and it's a medical and it's the AMR deems that they need to come to the hospital. They come to the hospital. As they enter our doors, we take responsibility, financial responsibility. Whether we treat that patient and keep them as an inpatient, discharge them, or transfer them out. That responsibility of the care and the finances is on the hospital's shoulders. We have resources to find a bed if we need to transfer them out, and then we look for the transfer and pay for that. We bill like we need to bill and do collections. What is the difference between the cost of the care, I'm not even talking about money billed, but the cost of the care and what we are reimbursed in collections, that difference falls on the hospital. If the hospital was not here, all of that would fall on the county. You would be looking to transfer those patients, AMR, working with AMR, and paying for that if the hospital wasn't here. Over to the sheriff's department, they bring patients in for behavioral health. We take those patients, same thing, they walk through our door. We have that responsibility on us. We care for those patients, and we have to transfer them out since we don't have those services here in San Benito County. The resources for finding a bed for them and actually transferring them out falls on the hospital. We bill for that and then get collections, and the difference between the two falls on the hospital. Again, that would go to the county, and I assume that you're working through those ideas of how and where you would hold those patients if the hospital closes, because our reality is if we don't get funding, we won't be able to make it, and the hospital will have to close, and those services will be on the county. What I do want to offer is, I know you want to do thoughtful analysis, so we have statistics to show you numbers of what that looks like. If that would help you, we would do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Barbara.
Good morning, and thank you, Board. My name is Barbara Vogelsang. I've been a registered nurse for 34 years, in hospital management for 22 years. I spent the past 9 years in executive leadership roles in California. I arrived to Hollister last September to fill the chief clinical officer role for a period of 90 days. When I checked into the hotel, the person at the front desk asked me what I was doing in town. And when I told him I was here to work at the hospital, he said, "Oh, that's a really bad hospital." My response to him was something like, "And my job will be to fix that." When I was asked to stay on as a permanent employee, I did so. I became the member of the executive team whose main responsibility is to ensure safe, patient, and quality care. The unique challenges facing Hazel Hawkins as a standalone district hospital somewhat dared me to take this on and be a part of this team. A few of these challenges include the fact that Hazel Hawkins must comply with all of the regulations that a large corporate hospital must comply with, but with no corporate structure to support it. Wages and benefits must be competitive in order to recruit and maintain the healthcare workers in this community. The people caring for our community deserve to be able to afford to live here. As the sole hospital in the county, it operates effectively as the county hospital with a large Medi-Cal population, yet there's not a bigger commercial payer to balance that, and the benefits of being a county hospital don't exist. One of the biggest challenges we face daily is the need to transfer patients out of the county to get the care that we can't provide here because they're not physicians in some of the most basic specialties like cardiac care or nephrology care for patients on dialysis. The responsibility and cost to recruit physicians to this community has fallen on the district. Over the past 15 months, the leadership team, with the support of the District Board of Directors, has worked diligently to achieve a renewed focus on quality outcomes and safe, reliable patient care, compliance with accreditation standards, and the conditions of participation required by CMS. As a member of the executive team, I am committed to carrying out the mission promoted by the San Benito Healthcare District Board of Directors, who are dedicated to ensuring the longevity of this facility and growing it into one which can provide all the basic healthcare services for this community. This includes not only ensuring excellent care for our patients, but a fiscal responsibility to the community and to the employees of the district. I ask that you sincerely consider the request of the hospital district and see it as an opportunity to build a partnership between the hospital district and the county in an effort to provide health care for the members of this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob Bernaski.
Thank you. Before you start the clock, I'd like to make a point of order. In my opinion, because these are hospital representatives here, they should not be just limited to public comment. I would hope that there'd be some dialogue going back and forth. To the extent that these folks need more time to explain their position, I would encourage it. I know that when I've been representing various entities to public agencies, they've allowed me to speak as long as possible. So if you could restart the clock at 3 o'clock, because that was 3 minutes, that was a point of order. So all of that said, look, the elephant in the room, Mrs. Casillas' new announcement today that the burden of healthcare costs would be on you guys or on the county of San Benito, if it goes bankruptcy. I think that requires a lot of digging into, which is why I would request that you guys get special counsel just to address these issues so you really know what the facts are. She might be right, I don't know, that seems pretty scary to me. But the elephant in the room is, and I don't know why that board and their representatives are displaying animosity to me, but the elephant in the room is it a sustainable hospital or not? And how can it be? What are the paths to sustainability other than bailouts? Because all they're asking you for is a bigger bilge pump, even though the leaks are still occurring. And I've put some solutions out there that I think are viable, and that involves getting every government entity to stop using the low-cost providers to go to a payer that will reimburse the hospital adequately, which means more people like me. If I were to get my gallbladder out today, I would not be using Hazel Hawkins Hospital. With all the inconveniences to my family, where they want to, be able to visit me during the day or whatever, I'd be going down to up to Gilroy or down to Chomp. That's silly. That's the problem. And if it isn't the problem and that isn't a solution, why won't they state that? How many times do I have to speak publicly about this and reach out to them and say, what is the business model that makes the hospital, what would make the hospital work? But it's just very, for lack of a better term, and I don't mean to be disparaging, it's fishy. The hospital can either sustain itself, or maybe you guys do have to take it over, and I don't think that's the reality. But let's actually bring the problem to the front and have let's face the music. But that's not what is happening here. Why aren't they addressing the very issue that got them into it? It's not the government that's putting them out of business. It's their business model. And you guys are actually part of it as an employer in the county of San Benito. Thank you.
You've been unmuted. Please say your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Bonner, and I've lived in the community of Hollister for 29 years. And I've been a nurse for Hazel Hawkins Memorial Hospital for the past 20 years. I've spent 35 years in healthcare, functioning in various roles. Our small rural hospital delivers not only traditional hospital services to our community, such as emergency care, inpatient care, maternity care, laboratory testing, but also delivers rehabilitation, long-term care, and primary care. Hazel Hawkins also rose to the occasion of COVID and joined with our local public health to ensure care was provided to the community during this crisis. Our dedicated staff on a daily basis have shown strong patient loyalty and have formed close relationships with physicians and care providers. The strengths of a community hospital are numerous, but all across California, not just Hollister, hospitals have faced challenges that have included not receiving Medicare reimbursements in a timely manner, providing care in an uncertain regulatory environment, facing the rising costs of staff and supplies, cuts in government funding, uncollectible debt, and unpredictable changes in regulations and the impact on planning. As a community, we need to focus on the value of our community hospital. Elected officials, in my own opinion, have a duty and a responsibility to do the right thing and assist in reviewing options to help keep the hospital doors open. There have been positive changes at Hazel Hawkins Hospital, and there needs to continue to be more opportunities for improved community health. It's also critical for our economy to have a community hospital that is able to provide numerous job opportunities. There's a word that repeatedly comes up, and that word is community. We know that members of a community have a sense of trust, belonging, safety, and caring for each other. The word itself connects all of us together and allows us to influence our environment. Hazel Hawkins Hospital is one of the few California hospitals still locally governed and able to ensure the healthcare needs of the community are fulfilled. As a member of our community, I'm requesting that the board will continue to show willingness to work with the hospital in an effort to move to the direction of finding a solution to sustainability. I appreciate and respect the board and all the work that you do. My hope is that a partnership and commitment will be formed to address what matters most, and that's the quality of life and available health care to the residents of our community. Thank you.
You've been unmuted. Please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Liz Sparling. I am the Foundation Director at Hazel Hawkins Memorial Hospital, and I'm also a county resident in District 1. The Hospital Foundation is an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization that has been in effect since 1978 with a mission to provide financial resources to support Hazel Hawkins Memorial Hospital and all of the healthcare facilities in the San Benito Healthcare District. Under the leadership of a 21-member board of trustees, the Hazel Hawkins Hospital Foundation works to help meet specific healthcare needs of the people of San Benito County and the region. Our last fiscal year audit reported that we gifted Hazel Hawkins Memorial Hospital over $500,000. In a county of our size with over 100 nonprofits, that's a lot of donations from primarily residents that believe in our hospital. This year, the announcement of our financial emergency came the day before our biggest fundraiser of the year. This, of course, made me very nervous, but the attendees at our event and the emails and phone calls I received from donors reassured me of the importance of the community feels to our hospital. On a personal note, I am a relative newcomer to Hollister. I've only been here for 21 years, but my daughters are 7th generation San Benito County and relatives to Hazel Hawkins herself. Her grandfather, T.S. Hawkins, created this hospital for her because she passed away due to appendicitis due to the hospital being too far away to receive care. Is this county willing to go back to this where our residents have to travel out of town for care? As Dr. Bogie mentioned at the last meeting, this could be a matter of life or death. Now, more than ever, our community needs this hospital, and we need your support. I thank you all very much for your time.
You've been unmuted. Please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Joan Rogers. I'm a fourth generation county resident and I've worked at Hazel Hawkins Hospital for over 25 years. Ask yourself what you'd do if you or your family had a medical emergency and there was no hospital here. Where would you take your dad if he had a stroke, or your mom broke her hip, or your child had a severe asthma attack? What would happen if a teenager had a drug overdose or a homeless person has a mental health crisis? What would you do if you were stuck in traffic on 25 or 156 trying to get your loved one out of county for care? And what will happen to the over 700 employees and physicians here if this hospital goes under? When our fiscal emergency was announced, instead of offers to help, our board of directors and administrative team were faced with accusations of mismanagement and incompetence. Some people seem more invested in shutting us down than in promoting or supporting us. I feel that our leadership team should be applauded for keeping us going as long as they have in a very hostile environment for small rural standalone hospitals. Small hospitals like ours are closing all over the country. We've always run very lean because of our poor reimbursements, but we've stuck together as a team and provided care as the only hospital in this county. Some people take us for granted because we've always been here. We've been here for over 100 years, and we've been here for this community when they've needed us. Now we're in trouble, and we're asking you to be there for us. Thank you.
You've been unmuted. Please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Celeste Toledo Bocanegra. I'm speaking on behalf of the hospital. Well, I'm sorry, as a resident here and community member who basically feels betrayed by the hospital throughout COVID. We had family members there, and of course, this is it's absurd to close down the hospital. I understand that we need a hospital in Hollister, but we do have grievances because we had family members there who were going through hard times and had to follow NIH laws and regulations. There was medication that we couldn't provide to our family members during the emergency room while they were in the hospital, like hydrochloroquine and ivermectin. And it's truly unfortunate that these are now approved by the NIH. And unfortunately, it's very heartbreaking that our family members suffered and had to deal with the consequences afterwards. So just for FYI, the recount is completed and the elections department is making the adjustments to the final results, and you certified an inaccurate election. Thank you.
You've been unmuted. Please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Elia Salinas, good morning. And I do agree with Robert Bernowski on the point of order. I do believe that Mary Casillas should be allowed to have an answer and question segment, and I'm sure maybe that's something that the chair is going to do later on. I also agree with Robert with regards to this is the hospital's fiscal responsibility, and where was it? I heard a speaker say that they have provided the accurate care, and I have never ever had any negative meetings with any of the staff, of the doctors. As a matter of fact, I got my gallbladder removed at Hazel Hawkins Hospital, and I had great quality of care, and the nurses and the staff were all great people. However, you cannot put the burden on the community for the lack of inattentiveness from the board or the trustees. They failed their duty. They were not looking at the financials, and also we have trustees that weren't even making the meetings. They're not making the meetings. They're not paying attention to what's going on with the finances. It is they're the ones that have failed the community. The Board of Supervisors is not failing the community. They're willing to listen and giving them this advance on their money. I'm all for it, and I am all for. I know that the board wants to help in one way, but let's find out what happened. Why did they choose not to continue a contract with Blue Anthem? It was it was one of the two. I don't know which one it was, but you have Wynn and Shelton that are insurance brokers, and one of those brought Blue Anthem as a contract to the county. Then they turn around and they did a disservice because it was those trustees that turned down any kind of a contract with Anthem. And I'm telling you, I don't know what the cents on the dollar was, but 1 penny or 5 pennies is more than 0 pennies that are being retained right now by the hospital. That was a mistake, and that was a disservice to the high majority of community members that have Blue Anthem. They need to go back to talk to Blue Anthem and get something going. And unfortunately now Blue Anthem has control on the dollar because of the arrogance, in my opinion, of the board to turn it down. I do hope that you continue to have an open dialogue, but we need to find out what did they do that they have failed, because this didn't happen.
No further comments.
Okay, bringing it back to the board. Supervisor Tiffany.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to my comments that I made on Tuesday, I've got a number of them. First of all, I'll start by saying that, as I think I said on Tuesday, I really feel that we need, as a county, to do really everything possible to keep the hospital open. It is a community asset. It would be a huge blow to our community on so many levels if it were to close. Now, while saying that, we also, as a board, have an obligation to ensure that the county is not financially put at risk with whatever we do. So that's my starting position. I think the decision we have before us today, just to be clear, is just to approve this slightly over $2.2 million, essentially an advance, which is something that is we've done before. We did it with schools. It does not look like it puts the county at risk in any way. And so I'm certainly in support of doing that to buy the county and the hospital some time. When I say buy some time, let me stipulate the way I see what that means. So first of all, it would give time for the county to take a close look at the hospital's financial situation. I respect what the hospital has presented to us fiscally, but I think the county, if they're going to put an additional money out there in the form of a loan, the county has to do its own due diligence as far as looking at the financial situation. It's mentioned that it would be a partnership. Well, if this kind of a loan, upwards toward $10 million, were contemplated at a future meeting in January, I think it is essentially a partnership, and the county has to ensure that that it's comfortable with the numbers that are being presented to us from the hospital. It would also buy some time for us to talk to our own bankruptcy attorney, and I think that's part of our decision today, and I would certainly be supportive of it, that we do that. We've heard from the hospital's bankruptcy attorney, but obviously we would have to confirm ourselves that with the loan, the county would be totally protected, and there would be absolutely no risk to the counties getting reimbursement of that loan, whether the hospital goes into bankruptcy or, worst case scenario, whether the hospital actually closes. Also, buy some time to look at the likelihood that the hospital can either find a buyer or get to some other kind of position of survival during the 5 to 6 extra months that this potential loan of $10 million would give to the hospital. If you look at the numbers as of right now, at the end of May, and I guess we may have it, there may be another month now that we're being told, they're going to be in a position of just over $300,000. My concern, I've raised this, and I wasn't the only one to raise this, is that, okay, in 5 to 6 months, how realistic it is that a solution is going to be found? How realistic is it that a buyer for the hospital is going to be found? So I think the county needs to sit down with the hospital and really take a look at that. And if it's pretty clear that it's not going to make a difference, then it may make more sense, as I raised and others have raised, for the hospital to actually go into Chapter 9 and go into bankruptcy, to give it protection so it really has the time and the ability to explore all options as a solution. I know that's not preferred option, but I think that's part of the equation that has to be looked at during the next month or so when they have additional time, when we go ahead, I believe, which hopefully we will today, with this advance. And then lastly, we need to, as a county, closely look at how the loan, even if we determine that this loan does not put the county at any financial risk, and we can confirm that we will be fully reimbursed, how will the loan impact the county's cash flow and its ability to provide other services to our residents? I feel that this is right at the top of our list. It's a priority above maybe anything and everything else. As much as I'd like to see our roads fixed and other things that we've decided, but will this loan, if we go forward with it, the $10 million loan, how will it impact our cash flow? How will it impact our ability to provide other services? We need to know that. The county needs to know that so that it can make a decision with that understanding. Last comments I'll make. If we do the advance of 2.2 and change, really, even though it's presented to us as a potential $10 million loan that the board would look at in January, the way I see it, it would be really more like a $7.75 million, because that would be the balance of that $10 million. I would still expect that the hospital would continue to explore other loans, as we discussed on Tuesday, like whether it be from the city or otherwise. And then, although it ultimately wouldn't change my vote today, I'm supportive of this advance one way or another. I do think ideally that the county should receive interest on the advance. I think it's our obligation as a board to keep the county's finances as whole as possible, and so that I would be supportive of the interest. But I'm going to support the advance one way or another today. Thank you.
Supervisor Kozmicki?
Sure thing. We have a list of objectives here, as mentioned by Supervisor Tiffany. First off is the transfer. As long as we're being told and all our information shows that there's zero risk to the county, that we would essentially keep, we would give them an advance on their property tax payment that they're already set to receive. That needs to be made very clear to the public that we are not loaning money in a traditional fashion. We're simply following a constitutionally allowed practice, as Joe Paul Gonzalez has pointed out, to just do an early transfer of the $2.2 million. And I would be okay with that as long as we have assurance that there is zero risk, and we would essentially keep that $2.2 million once April came around, when we would normally be giving it to them anyway. So just from a logical perspective, I don't see why we wouldn't support that strategy that I appreciate our auditor came up with. Now to the loan. So I just want to make it very, very clear, and this needs to be really understood, whether it's this board or the next board, but I think in particular for this board,
that this is a 4/5 vote for approval since it's a budget adjustment. And if 4 supervisors aren't in support of this, either in 2022 or in 2023, based on today, possibly, that, you know, this concept of a $10 million loan should be put to rest, so that the hospital district can go forward and seek out other avenues to try to get financially stable. So I've made it clear I cannot support a massive emergency loan to the hospital district for a variety of practical reasons, with an emphasis on fiscal responsibility. But putting that aside for a few moments, I do want to emphasize that I fully understand the hospital is extraordinarily important for this community. It's the most pressing and consequential challenge facing our community. As I've stated to hospital officials, we have to all work together to find a viable, responsible solution to ensure the community has a hospital for generations to come. And I know we all want to do what's responsible to help save this hospital. And in fact, on Monday, when our lobbyists came down for the annual visit with each of the supervisors, where we give them our preferences, I told her my number one priority for this county to use its resources on with this lobbyist is to help the hospital district seek out assistance from the state and federal government. So I want that to be very clear. I'm not anti-hospital. I appreciate the hospital. Our family uses the hospital. As I've stated in the past, my 17-month-old child was born at the hospital. I've recently been to the hospital myself. It's extremely important that this community work together to save the hospital. But beyond that, our number one responsibility as a county board, as a county, is we have a fiduciary responsibility to make decisions that are responsible for this county. Every decision we make, we have to weigh, is that a responsible fiscal decision for this county? And I have to say, with regard to the, this concept of what I have termed a bailout, because frankly, I believe that's what it is. It's without precedent, it's extremely risky, and it's completely fiscally irresponsible for the Board of Supervisors to even consider a $10 million loan. And I agree, I have not seen a business plan to stabilize the situation other than hope, and hope is not a plan. I am not willing to gamble $10 million in taxpayers' money on hope. And there also seems to be this stark misconception that San Benito County is in a position to make this kind of loan. This is not something this county has ever done, and there's a reason for that. We are not in a position to do it. We are putting ourselves, if we go forward with something like this, in an extremely financially murky situation where our safety net is now reduced, where we are unable to do essential. I know I'm not comparing healthcare with road projects. We're not able to do essential projects that $10 million would have gone for, and beyond that, and this is the most important part, the hospital still might go into bankruptcy. So we're putting $10 million on the line potentially, and there's a high likelihood the hospital still goes into bankruptcy. There's a possibility the hospital, unfortunately, if we as a community cannot find a solution, there's still a real possibility that the hospital shuts down and our $10 million is gone. Or if there's a claim that somehow we can get paid back over the years, I agree. I agree with Supervisor Tiffany completely. Undeniably, there's a cash flow issue here. That's completely undeniable. If we're talking about a 6-year loan, that means we don't have our money for 6 years. And if something happens in the next couple years, in particular, as in an economic downturn, we are in big, big trouble. And we are in much bigger trouble than we would have been if we didn't make a financially reckless decision. So above all, as a small county, we're entrusted by our taxpayers and our hardworking employees to maintain fiscal stability, to ensure we have the capability to provide basic services, address infrastructure needs, and pay fair wages to our county staff. And by approving this kind of loan, we would be blatantly shirking all of those responsibilities. And I come back to this 4/5 thing, if I may. I'm against this today, and I'm going to be against it next year. And so unless there are 4 other supervisors going forward that are going to support the loan, it cannot go forward. And so, I would like some reasonability when we come down to trying to make a decision on, if there's a 3-2 vote, if there's a 2-3 vote, whatever it may be, if it's clear that we're not going to have 4 votes this year or next year, this really needs to be shut down now so that the hospital district has the ability to focus its attention and resources elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gonzalez.
I knew this was going to be a difficult conversation, and so first of all, I just want to thank Joe Paul Gonzalez for bringing as an option of the 85% advance, because that wasn't even an option coming into Tuesday's meeting. So thank you. You gave us a little bit of wiggle room. And as to Supervisor Kosmicki's comment about a 4/5 vote, I understand that. I know that. And that's why I was being such an advocate for it. I know next year it won't happen just because of the dynamics of the board. I know Supervisor Kosmicki's position, it won't happen. So it's really resting here if we're going to move forward with the loan. Now, if we don't go forward, as I said before, I will abide by the board's majority's decision, but I would hope that we do not close the door as Supervisor Kosmicki suggested. I hope that we keep it open. Since the article in Benito link, people have been joking around, where's my $10 million? I want a $10 million loan. Even last night at the chamber event someone joked around, and I just wanted to slap him. But it's not that I take this lightly. I understand the crucialness of it. And as Supervisor Kosmicki said, we're not in the business for giving loans, but how many times are you going to find a hospital, the only hospital in the community, in a fiscal crisis that's asking for help? It's not like they've had a handout for years and years and years. And yes, this is the first case of first precedence. We don't know how to deal with it, but at least we have an option, the 85% advance. We have an option to consider the loan, the 7-point-something million. But I'm just grateful the conversation is happening, because when the agenda was set, it wasn't going to happen at all. The decision had been made behind closed doors. It wasn't going to happen, and that was it. And I was livid. So I'm grateful for the conversations. I'm grateful for the input. I would love to see the possibility of helping the hospital out. But the reality is, we really don't know your fiscal plan. We don't know your business plan. And you must be honest and transparent. And if you want to be a partner, you got to meet me halfway. Okay? Not over here, but halfway. And that means dialogue, communication, facts, details. And if you want this board to support you, you got to come and meet us at the table. Okay? Because right now I'm hearing from Mr. Banowski, from others saying, you're not being transparent enough. And where I come from, transparency. I mean, I live by that. There's no secrets in my background. Everybody knows where I come from, my background, and where I'm heading. And if I'm going to attach my name to anything, it must be transparent and it must be fair. So I fully understand the 4/5 vote. I totally understand that. I went into the conversation knowing it was a 4/5 vote, and I know that the next year, the board won't be able to give the hospital a 4/5 vote. I know that. So the other alternate was a suggestion, possibly wait until the budget. And so I don't want to put it to rest yet. Maybe when we look at the budget in May, June, that might be a possibility. But again, that's going to be determined on the new board. It won't require a 4/5 vote, so there's a possibility. I just don't know if the hospital can hold on for 6 months. And from what I've heard, they're not going to. So that might be a moot conversation anyways. But I wish you all the luck. You have my support. I'm going to vote for the 85%. I'm going to vote for the loan, but we'll see what the majority decides. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gonzalez. Supervisor Zanger?
Yeah. So I think we all understand the importance of the hospital. I need to go over again how we see the importance, and we don't hate sick people or anything like that. I think it's been said. And so I find myself agreeing with Supervisor, Gonzalez, Kosmicki, and Tiffany regarding temporary transfer. I don't see an issue with that at all. I think it's a good idea, and I'm also grateful that was brought up to us. So I do appreciate that, and I see that. But I'm also thinking about it logically, and there is the 4/5 vote situation. And so if that's not going to happen in the next year, it really doesn't make sense to me to keep pushing this along if that's the case. It just seems like we're just kind of wasting everyone's time. And I know that doesn't sound nice, doesn't sound pleasant, but it seems to be the truth. And so I'm not really interested in wasting everyone's time. And so I support the temporary transfer, but I don't really see why it makes sense to continue the conversation beyond that if we're not going to get anywhere anyway.
Well, it's a big burden, this situation, and I really feel for the hospital. And to me, it's not an option to not consider options, but that's going to take some serious communication. So there's 5 things that I wanted to reference. It's along the lines, without being long-winded and repeating what supervisors have already mentioned. Temporary transfer, granted, there's no risk from what we're being advised. There isn't. Would be definitely a solution that we can consider to give you more time to try to come up with the plan. It's been said a lot already that the communications component is really important, because we have to understand the situation, the plan, ultimately to know, right, how to even begin to help. And we're going to need bankruptcy attorneys ourselves to be able to get involved in that conversation to figure out if there is a potential viability and how something could move forward. A loan, I do believe, is too high risk for the county. I think when it comes to a loan, without repeating what Supervisor Kosmicki had mentioned, I also think about the reality of public safety that we are in a position to have to preserve. So there's when it comes to us being solvent, it's not even just getting away from the commitments we've already made through these last handful of years, with all the time we've put in to work on the commitments to the public, with not just roads, but everything else, right? Building a plan for viability, us as a county, dealing with lack of ability to fund positions, right? We're in a competitive environment. There's all these things that we're trying to compensate for that makes us be able to function as a county. God forbid we have an emergency ourselves, right? Like we did during COVID, that in of itself put us in a really tight fiscal constraint, and we proudly were able to preserve our jobs in our county, not lay people off, come up with a plan. But that took some functioning of the budget and the flexibility of the liquidity of our budget to be able to do that. So we really do need a plan for solvency. I think that's the way the communications are going to start, thinking about what that means as far as change, whether that means working with Anthem or even when it comes down to the 3/4 of your funding coming from Medi-Cal, Medicare. I know that's that there's the reimbursement rate is hard to overcome, especially because the state sets the rules. That's kind of the conversation we had at the last board meeting, is the state sets the rules, so we are limited to that. But I still think that's why the importance of these conversations with the state are even more important. Lastly, I think there needs to be a stronger advisory role from the county with any of these communications, so that we make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, even preserving the county interests, protecting us from liability, all the things that have to be considered, right? We even have to consider contract negotiations on our behalf when we're doling out money. Then on our end, we're going to have to obviously consider making sure that we're preserving the interest of our negotiations, so that there's not issues with our relationships and our bargaining units. So all that to be said is also I'm going to support also the transfer. Hopefully we can have these communications. The only other thought that I had was, as just a consideration, if the county would consider maybe putting this to a bond for the public to get involved in the conversation. I think this really needs to be a community-wide conversation. Not to say that, this board doesn't have the time to be able to make that decision, but that would be for the new board to consider. My point is the new board being brand new, right? There's going to be a lot of deep diving that's going to have to happen for them to truly understand the implications of this decision. And I just think for our board that's leaving, our board members, it would put us in a crucial or a hard to mitigate situation where we hand off this big responsibility if we were to give that loan. You guys having to deal with those consequences, and I don't think that would be fair. So all that to be said is I'm ready to take a vote from the board. I believe the vote is going to have to be 2 separate votes, right? One for the transfer, and then the other one will be for the loan.
And then Supervisor Hernandez, there's also the option for with or without interest. Can we decide if we're going to do the 85% with or without interest before we take the vote?
If the board members would like to share about their thoughts.
Can we hear from Melinda?
Oh, Yes.
I'm sorry. As the treasurer, I'd just like to say a couple of words. When the idea of the temporary transfer came about, I went back and I researched the temporary transfer a little bit more. And under Section 6 of the Article 16, it says that the temporary transfer is for those entities whose funds are in custody and are paid solely through the treasurer's office. This does not happen to be the case with Hazel Hawkins. However, I think the intent of the temporary transfer is being met regardless of this language, in that we are going to be advancing property taxes, 85% of property taxes. And so there is not necessarily a risk to the county unless we advanced 85% and we paid property taxes, which is not our intention. So I think we're okay as far as the intention of the temporary transfer, even though the language is a little bit different, and I wanted you to understand that the language is a little different. And then I know we're not talking necessarily about the $10 million loan today. However, I just want to say that as the county treasurer, it's my responsibility to safeguard the assets of the county. And so would the $10 million put the county at risk for payback? And so that's something that we have to consider. And as the county treasurer, I would say yes, that puts us at risk. So those are my comments.
And Mr. Chair, also, can we get clarification on the treasury aspect? There was a line in the staff report about some counties maintain.
Basically, the Constitution section, Article 16, Section 6, it's written broadly, and it allows when money, districts whose money is in the county treasury, they can get up to 85% of all their revenue transferred to the district. Now, we don't have, and so it depends on whether you view this as a strict construction or whether you view it more the intent, I guess, or a little bit more liberally. So here we do not have all the money in the county treasury, so we could not advance 85% of the entire district's revenue to them in advance. What we do have is the property tax comes through the county and out to the district. So what we're saying is for the portion of the money that is held in the county treasury, we can advance that 85%. So it's the language. You can. There's I copied out the language of Section 6. I think that there's very little risk. There's the risk. I mean, we have the property taxes. We're just giving an advance on what would normally be sent out in April.
Okay.
Yeah, some counties would not allow it.
Yeah.
But
We're still talking about the same amount of money.
Yes.
The two.
But I
whatever,
think that the board,
But it's not a specific line item like budget allocation for the hospital, it's more broadly.
No, this is coming out of, I understand, our liquid assets. It's not from a budgeted line item.
And what level of interest, is there a clarity on what level of interest we're talking
It would
about?
normally be what we're earning on that liquid assets. I believe that Melinda indicated about 4%, but it would be varied month by month based upon what we're earning, and I defer to you on that.
Oh, that's market.
Yes, correct. Currently, if you went ahead with the advance of the 85% of the property taxes, the money would be coming out of our liquid cash right now, and currently it's earning 4%. I do want to make a distinction that come the end of December, based upon the distribution of the teeter plan property taxes, they would be receiving close to half of that amount anyways, and so interest would not necessarily be calculated on basically half of it. But our liquidity pool changes, the rates that we're earning interest-wise changes basically on a weekly basis.
So when we're talking about interest, if we go forward with the interest component, you're saying that some of the money that we advance would not have interest applied, but we would be making a decision on that which was additional than the teeter money. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying that Joe Paul would be apportioning roughly about half of that $2.2 million by the end of December. So I don't think that should be part of the interest calculation if that's what we did. And then the remaining 1.1 would basically possibly change on a daily, on a weekly basis.
So to
We're
clarify.
guessing maybe about 15,000 more or less, depending on the interest rate
But I'm just
changes.
clarifying, Melinda, and so the 1.1, which is the half, more or less, and again, the numbers might not be exactly, but the 1.1 is half, is what they would have been entitled to in December. So no interest applied on that, but the advance would be what they would have got in April, they get now, and that's where the interest, we would assess it on what would have been given to them in April, May, whatever the time frame was.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
You,
Okay.
So the interest would be applied to half.
Half of it.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a different question? This is not for you, Melinda, actually, but it sounds like we're in agreement as far as this advance, which that's one decision. The other decision, as was already laid out, is this issue about whether we would direct county staff to explore further this idea of the loan. And Supervisor Kosmicki's brought up rightfully the 4/5 vote. The question I have, and I guess is for county council, is if we already know that, ultimately decision on the loan would be made next year's board. We already know that there's one vote that is a no on that. Now, given the circumstances with Supervisor-elect Sotelo potentially having to recuse herself from this decision, it has to be 4 votes. 3/4 vote does not pass. That's the question I have.
No, and I'm not sure whether you actually have 4 votes, even with the current
Well,
vote
we don't
board.
know. Yeah,
And you
there's
would
no way
need
to
4
know.
votes. You would need 4 votes
That's
next
the
year.
point. That's the
Even if
question I
there's
have.
4
You have
people
to have
that are
4
voting on it, you would
have
need
to have
4.
4 votes,
Yes.
period.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
You would also have to have a huge conversation about the realignment of the budget if those 4/5 even somehow came about.
And there's no way to know whether you have the other votes or not.
Well,
but-
Mr. Chair, we could find that out today.
But
There are 2 members up here that are going to be on the board next year. So if it's clear today that there is not going to be support, there is no reason for us to pay a bankruptcy attorney to spend staff time and resources to have them spend.
But potentially, I know where your position is, but potentially the other person or the other people that are going to be on the board, they may want to hear, the full analysis. They may want to look at the whole situation before they make that decision. But if it's clear that you need 4 votes, and we already know that you're a no, and we know that there's an abstention, you don't have the 4 votes no matter what. So there isn't any point of going forward. Unfortunately, in my mind, but that's the reality. So that's what I wanted to clear up. Okay, thank you.
And I was fully aware of that going into this conversation, both what's happening with this board and the 2023 board. So I knew the dynamics, and that's why I demanded the conversation.
And Mr. Chair, can I just add for protocol, or do we want to do the transfer and come back to do we want to take a vote on the transfer and come back to the loan and finish that conversation, or do we want to do it all in?
Well, there'd be 2 motions.
Right.
Right? And technically, each motion could have a conversation, but we've kind of beat it up right now.
I know, but I would like some firm clarity on this loan situation, so we don't walk away from here leaving false hope for the hospital district, for leaving the community in consternation over, this debate about a county loan. I just think if we have clarity today, then we could do the transfer, and then if we have clarity on the loan, again, the hospital can now know they have to focus their efforts elsewhere.
Yeah, so if we can get a vote from your board
So can we
on
do
those
the
items.
transfer maybe first and then?
Yes, that was the plan. So yes, if I can get a motion, I'm at the will of the board. So what is the direction of the board?
I'll move that we approve the transfer and assess the interest of 4% on the second half of the 85%.
Could, for the maker of the motion, can I ask points of clarification?
Yes.
Instead of a set interest rate of 4%, pardon?
Oh, because of the market rate change.
It's going to vary.
Yeah.
Okay, so then whatever is stated in that.
Yeah, on the pool, the interest that we earned on the pool
With an
rate.
approximate of 4%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll
And then, I'm sorry, also for the maker of the motion, will you allow us to make minor modifications of the agreement? It was just sent over to the hospital district last night. Their attorney, I think, will be in the process of reviewing it. If they have any minor changes, can we have delegated
flexibility,
authority?
yes.
To change, minor changes to it?
Language changes.
Yeah, minor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Minor is a relative term.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did Dom say
Aye.
yes?
Yeah, I
Okay,
said-
good.
yeah, I
5-0. Thank
And that
you.
includes adopting the resolution.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, if we've moved on to the loan,
And that also included the approval of the transfer agreement, just so the resolution, the motion was clear.
again, I just think it's really important to have clarity here for everybody's sake. Hiring a bankruptcy attorney is an extremely expensive proposition. Our staff would have to scramble in the next month, and then we may very well not have support. So I think we should go through each supervisor and are you in support of the loan or not, or we just take a vote and we know from the vote. But
Well, we kind of already did that.
well, I haven't heard from Supervisor Zanger. Hasn't really clearly. I would really like to know, Supervisor Zanger, are you willing today to say you're not in support of the loan?
Yeah, I think I would say that. Yeah, I would say I'm not in support of the loan at this point. And I'm not really clear on what Chair Hernandez was suggesting in May. He suggested some type of
Oh,
community-
it was just the start of a conversation for a potential bond, because the bond by default is a public vote, and it would put this in the forefront so that there's
No, the
questions
taxpayers are taxed out. They will not entertain a bond.
Well, and I wouldn't necessarily vote for yes on a bond, but the public would be involved in the conversation. That was kind of the biggest point.
Mr. Chair, just so we look at every possibility, and I kind of think I know the answer, but if, there's been this $10 million loan we're talking about, and actually 7.75 is really what it would be if now that we're doing this advance, would there be any consideration to either of you considering a smaller loan? Or is it any loan?
Nope.
Okay, I was just, would it
Too
make
much
a
to
difference? I
consider.
guess that's
No matter the
question.
amount, there's just
Okay.
too many questions, I believe.
Okay.
Liability-wise.
All right, I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
And I would just ask for reasonability then from the rest of the board, because if we walked away, for instance, with a 3-2 vote, you're still directing staff to go do a bunch of work that is, at this point, unnecessary.
Well, I mean,
it is.
I see your point, Supervisor. My only thought is, honestly, I'm seeing tough times through all the different layers of government, and personally, to understand what that means, I don't think is unwise to. So my point is this is good. This is going to be at the forefront of the public, and for us to understand that issue, I don't think is a bad thing.
But Mr. Chair, Supervisor Zanger and I are on the board next year. With all due respect, you are not.
Yeah.
And you would be directing staff to do work, and then they would come back in a month, and we would say no to the loan. So
It would be at your discretion. It's just my vote. That's all.
Well,
I mean, you could disagree.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well,
I would be supportive of the staff looking at the possibility. I know about the investment in time and wasting staff resources. However, I would be supportive because if we cannot do a vote in a loan in the future, I will then be looking at the budget to see if we can get a vote during the budget time to help out the hospital if it's not too late.
Well, and I let me just jump
I
in
think
here.
I still have the floor. I'm so sorry. We're going all over
Yeah,
the
that's-
place here. I've had the floor and I
Supervisor
lost it
Kozmicki
somehow.
has the floor.
Again, we come into the middle of the year, and if Supervisor Zanger and I are against the loan, and sorry for putting you on the spot, but Supervisor-elect Sotelo has to recuse herself, there just aren't the votes. So it just doesn't make any sense for us to spend time and resources on something that we know is not going to happen. And, so you're telling me that there's no loan, there's no possibility of a loan, but you want to potentially vote 3-2, and I'm hoping that Supervisor Tiffany sees what I'm saying here, to have staff hire an expensive bankruptcy attorney. You and I have debated over $200. We've talked about that. To hire an expensive bankruptcy attorney to spend God knows how much time to give false hope.
It's
to the
not
hospital
about false
district.
hope,
What is
yeah.
the point of hiring a bankruptcy attorney if we know we're not going to do a loan?
Mr. Chair,
Now, I'll give up the floor now. I think I've
Okay.
made my points pretty
Yeah,
strongly.
yeah.
over and over again. But we're not even talking about hiring an attorney at this point. Right now, we're looking at
That's in the
staff.
staff report.
But I'm just saying, right
can
now,
exclude
looking at
that.
staff to look at the possibilities. Again, this conversation has gone a lot further than I even had hoped. So thank you all for just giving me the input and giving the community the input, giving the hospital the input. I thank you. And I hear your adamant, no, and possibly a no over there.
You said
But-
no.
Okay, I hear you're both adamant no's, okay? And I've heard again. Anyways, going back to the fact, I do want to invest staff time to see, is there a possibility? Because if it doesn't work for the loan, there is this possibility during the budget time, and the homework would have been done already. So I don't want to put a fork in it and make it be done. I want to look at the options. And it looks like you might have a majority that want to allow that possibility to exist. But for some reason, you want to kill it. And I don't know why you want to kill it.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
go for it,
Yeah,
Supervisor
thank you.
Tiffany.
Yeah, I understand. I totally get you about the loan, Colin. But we learned on Tuesday about an advance that we had no idea about. So I think it makes sense, as important as this issue is for this county, to at least, the loan does, I agree, if there's not the votes there, fine. But that doesn't mean there might not be something else that the county can do to support the hospital. And there's no reason not to at least direct staff to sit down with the hospital and explore whether there's any options to help in any other way.
Yep.
That's what I would
Totally.
suggest.
And I just want to chime in here. We're more than willing to do that. Staffs, next
can
year we
exclude
can work
the
on that,
bankruptcy
meet with
attorney in
them.
the conversation. That's
Again,
fine.
we are in conversations with our lobbyist. As soon as this came to our attention, we've been on the horn with them to try to find some resolution to this. So we are more than willing to do that over the next few months. So
This is a bigger issue than just money. I see so many layers to this in complexity. My biggest take is, and not so much wanting to spend money on a bankruptcy attorney, it's the board's ability to be informed and understand the complexity of these oncoming issues, right? These things there's a reason why even the interest rates are increasing, right? There's a cost to everything. So my point is we need to be more informed rather than not. Whether that goes through a bankruptcy attorney or not, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is understanding the issues of our county, and we're going to have a ringing in our ear of the sentiment of the county because they're going to want to know, and we're not going to have clear answers. So I would rather that be a consistent conversation. I would rather err on the side of caution with the interest of the public being a part of that conversation, and that's my biggest point.
Yeah. Well, so from what I understand, the staff's willing to continue looking into this, right? That's all good. I think what we're talking about is just putting to bed the specific idea of the $10 million loan, right? Or the 7.7.
Right. And the bankruptcy attorney, and I apologize if I could just chime in. The bankruptcy attorney is my main concern because it's a very expensive proposition, and we're clearly not going down that road at this point. That's all I was trying to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
yeah, so we're clear with that.
For the estimate on that, it would be the initial contract, well, the estimate was $10,000 for an opinion on the effects of a bankruptcy on a loan. So that would be little less than 20 hours of work, was the estimate that they gave us back. It could come in under that, and that's just throwing that out there for you.
Okay. So if we can make a motion, unless there's any other thoughts, but if we could make a motion on the first item, the temporary transfer, and the approval of the resolution, I believe. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
So, right.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
So now it's
on
the
on
loan.
I'll make a motion that we as a county board are not willing to engage in the prospect of a $10 million loan or of a loan, but that we will direct staff to spend some time working with the hospital district on potential other solutions outside of fiscal impacts.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's stay in touch. Thank you. So now we're on to, yeah, sorry, I have two different agendas. Yeah, 1.B, appointment of Josie Sanchez, Paul Gonzalez.
Mr. Chair, Board of Supervisors, the item before you is simply a resolution to approve the appointment of Josie Sanchez to the San Benito County Healthcare District, Zone Area 7. 4, sorry.
Okay, so, unless there's, public comment, please.
In chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press star 9 or the raise your hand icon. No comment.
Okay, bringing it back to the board. What's the will of the board? If I can get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve that appointment.
Can I ask a question for clarity?
Sure. Well, if you can,
Mr. Chair?
if you could do
Yeah, I'll
the
second
second,
it
and then
ask
go
him.
ahead.
Just want to make, this is the same situation we had with Mr. Pack, I believe, where there was one.
Yes.
Just so the public's aware, and essentially, to a certain extent, I think we're obligated to approve this.
Yes, you are, because under the code, this is the only option available to the board is to appoint the person who was duly nominated.
Right. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay. So that was a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you,
Thank
Joe
you.
Paul. Thank you, Francisco. Okay. So I believe we can now go to this, the continuation, right? And then consent items. I don't have my old agenda, so if we can. Yeah, if we could repeat back there was like
Oh, yeah, I
6
took the
items to
picture.
discuss.
So we have,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, your board can go ahead and adjourn from the special meeting, Mr. Chair. And then we also have, I'll just be a point of clarity, on our continuance, we do have 3.6 still left on our regular agenda, as well as 4.4, 4.5, 4.8, 4.18,
Yeah.
4.32 and 4.35 and 4.36 on consent. So those are the remaining agenda items that we have. So I just wanted to pass that back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, yeah, we could make 3.6 last. That's fine. Yeah, so we have 4.18 first.
4.4.
4.4 and 4.5. I'm sorry.
So what, we did 4.18?
It's weirdly numbered. It's actually 4.18.
Oh.
And if you want to do that first, Mr. Chair, that's your prerogative.
It's fine, 4.4. Doesn't matter. That's Supervisor Gonzalez, I believe.
The reason I had these two pulled, 4.4 and 4.5, is because not more than 45 days ago, this board voted in a 4-to-1 vote with Supervisor Kosmicki being the no. So Supervisor Hernandez and Tiffany and I and Supervisor Dirks, we voted and we asked for this to come back to the board, the new board, when the new board is seated sometime January or February. And so for this to come back up, and pardon my words, but secretly, to be put on the consent item, it's absurd. The board already voted, we already directed staff, and for it to pop back up is just ridiculous. These are the issues that I have with this board, which I feel is disingenuous, and it's kind of conniving, and that, come on, this decision was already made, and all of a sudden you bring it back. Why? I just don't understand, why?
4.32.
And that conversation goes to both 4.4 and 4.5.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor.
I'm just wondering if county council or, there's a little bit of sensitivity here and as far as where this came from. It wasn't secretly put on the agenda. I don't know how much you want to disclose about who was actually involved in agreeing to put this on the agenda, if that legally is possible and okay. Because otherwise there's ambiguity, and and I understand Supervisor Gonzalez's frustration, but this is not something that, for instance, the chair and I did not decide to put this on the agenda. So I just want to make that understood.
Right.
Perhaps without going into a lot of the background stuff that has been happening that's confidential.
Right. How about I just say this? There was, felt that it was more advantageous to, I think I should probably speak to Supervisor Gonzalez directly.
Okay.
There was a decision that there was a need to have an updated on the board rules so that there was clarity upon the board as far as the expectations on the board. And I'm happy to explain to Supervisor Gonzalez personally about the reasons that it came to be on the board.
Why wasn't I talked to previously? You and I had a conversation about this being on the consent. Why did you not disclose that then? If there was a conversation that you and I needed to have, it should have happened then.
There's more.
And so this sounds like it's personnel stuff that you guys like to call personnel. I don't want to have that conversation. You want to talk to me, you talk to me after. I would like to discuss why these two are on here, and I would like to just have a vote. Just call for the vote. I would like to pull
Can we
these.
just maybe take 5 minutes?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
I don't want to take 5 minutes, Barbara.
Yeah.
I don't.
I think that it's up to the board.
Yeah, so the will of the board, I want to take a 5-minute break, please. A coffee break.
I'm not walking away. I'm not going to talk to you.
Okay.
ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, everybody, we're 10:28, calling the meeting back to order. We're going to follow up with the 4.4 item. So just to clarify, as the chair of the board, this was an item that was requested, and I am consistent in the fact that I supported this from the beginning. So there was a request to bring it back, and therefore that's why it's on the agenda. So if I can ask for a motion on this item. No, so we already had consent public comment.
This is a continuance
Yeah,
from
this is a
on Tuesday, and we
continuance.
already had public
Yeah,
comment.
So what is the will of the board?
Do we want any, is there any need for discussion or?
I made my comment. Supervisor Gonzalez said she was done making hers, so now it's
Yeah,
just
no,
a-
I'll just, Mr. Chair, if I can, I'll just jump in there. And again, my vote previously, and I still feel the same way, is I'm fully supportive of everything that's in both 4.4 and 4.5. And whether it's approved today or it's approved first, in January, when I'm not on the board, I have no problem with it. I voted previously to delay it to the new year only because I felt like it was something the new board should take on. And basically, because they're the ones that are going to be dealing with it. But I'm totally in support of it, but I still feel it should wait till the new year. So,
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Can I jump in there?
Supervisor Zanger?
Yeah, so I'm obviously a little out of the loop here on when this started and all, but I read through it and I'm pretty indifferent as to what the when this is approved or not approved. It seems pretty basic to me. It's just kind of general guidelines. I don't really have an issue with it or a strong feeling one way or the other.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor
Yeah, and
Conley.
I get what Supervisor Tiffany said. When we go back to the last meeting, I asked the two new supervisor-elects if they had a preference to take part in this conversation. Just backing up a second, when you read these rules and their proposed rules, there's nothing that's radical or all of it just basically addresses ensuring that we're all on the same page when it comes to appropriate procedures and protocol, and ensuring that every supervisor is acting as professionally as possible, with a certain level of etiquette at all times. And so I don't see any necessarily any controversy with putting in these rules. And I also would say that the new board, I would certainly welcome if we want to take it up in January. I'm certainly welcome doing that, or February, or if they want some time to kind of get a feel for the lay of the land. These are dynamic board rules. It's not like the affordable housing ordinance where you send it back and it goes through a 2-year-long process before it comes back. It's something that we've addressed multiple times, board rules, in the last 2 years, and I would expect that as time goes on, we might make some tweaks along the way as well. But I would certainly welcome comments from if they would like.
So thank you again for considering us coming in for the next month. I absolutely would love a little bit more time. There's a few things that I would like to maybe clean up a little bit. I think there's some questions that I have on some of the items that have been changed. I agree. I think it's a great starting place. I think we all need to get along. I think there needs to be a lot of respect. Some of my questions: who's going to when there is something out of line, who is going to be kind of reprimanding us or whatever? Is it from our CAO? Is it county council? Is it the chair? How does all of this work together? I think it's great, but is it really necessary, or do we get, having a little more respect for one another? And I'm hoping that I can take a look at that and maybe have a few more conversations with people, and we can get something that really kind of works for our new board going forward.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut off Supervisor Alexa Tello, but technically we weren't supposed to do public comment. But either way, now that Supervisor Tell had her piece. We need to open it up to the rest of the public also.
I completely agree with Supervisor-elect
yeah.
Sotelo. I want to come on this board and unite the board and not divide the board. And as you can see, I don't see that happening with these items. So let's have the conversation and try and come to terms that we don't all get along. I get it. We don't all agree with each other, but we have to work together. And the community sees this. They hear it in the public when you're out there representing the county. Whether you're on duty or not on duty, we're always on duty. We have to remember what we do in the public is how they look at us on this board. And I want to bring respect, professionalism, and collaboration to this board. And I hope that if we do make changes, that we all agree, if you're out of line, we will be calling you out of line, and we need to make sure that we come back to being in line and focused on making the county a better place to live. Thank you.
Robert, did you have some comments?
Sure. Robert Gibson County. I would just urge you to just put this off until the 17th. It's not going to hurt one way or the other, but at least let the two supervisors-elect have their say. You two have been relieved of the burden of putting up with what is the county's circus, but at least allow them to have the vote instead of, you were fortunate enough to be seated, so you have a vote, but if you weren't and you waited until January, would you want an old board making rules for you? I don't think you'd appreciate it. So I would just urge you just to put it off until the 17th, please. Thank you.
Okay. Any
Mr.
more
Chair,
public comment?
I'd recommend we put this off till next year.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Well,
Second it.
so we just barely brought it back to the board. I was wanting to make sure there was no other public comment.
Yes, there is.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
You've been unmuted. Please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Elia Salinas, thank you. I appreciate the fact that it's going to be brought back in January when it should have been. It was already voted on. And I understand Supervisor Hernandez, or Chair Hernandez, that you said that it was brought back, under consent. Yet the question really wasn't answered, is that you said yes, but who brought it back if there was a 4-to-1 vote to have it come back when the new board was seated? It's just, there's some questions there, and I understand why there's a question to it, and because it did come under consent, and I did question it, and as I do with other things that come under consent. I think as the new board comes in next year, there were 41 items under consent, and to put something like this when the board already made a decision and then bring it back under consent, I hope that the new board is not going to continue to allow this type of agendizing for the new year or for their term to come. So thank you for making sure that this comes, and let the new board review it. They may have some changes, they may not have some changes, but let's bring it back to the new year in January. Thank you.
No further comments.
Okay, bringing it back to the board. So just to clarify, so I know you made the motion. Anything that was in that language, and speaking even to the new board members, is the reality is there's a reason why those are intent on creating a standard. They're governing rules and procedures that are not hard and fast, because ultimately they're guidance, advisory, correct me if I'm wrong, County Council. And it really highlights one thing that I think is the strong element, is it sets a clarification about the fiduciary responsibility. A lot of the times we assume that just by doing something that we're protecting the public. Sometimes by not doing something, you're actually allowing things to move forward that actually can create liability. So without getting too much in the details, it really is to clarify and to not pick on one board member at all, because these rules are an expectation from the whole board. But the reality is, as you'll start to find out pretty quick once you sit behind here, is the lack of clarity, the ambiguity by default creates outcomes that you're going to have to mitigate, and you're going to spend so much time trying to mitigate them, you'll find out really fast that there's a reason why the standards are created, to set that expectation and bring everybody back to the table in an actually unifying way, because the conversation will be had as the rules are already set in place. It's really important to understand that. Otherwise, unity means whatever you want it to be, right? And it's under the assumption that we all have the same interpretation or definition of what unity actually means. So with that said, there was a second, or actually, if we can repeat that motion, just.
Yeah, just, and I did have one quick question for county council, but the motion was just to simply move this to the next year out of respect for the new board members. I certainly understand that. There wasn't any intent on, shirking them or not including them. It's just how things worked out as far as how this came forward. And I just, I want to make it clear that this wasn't something that, for instance, that I individually just by myself pushed, or Supervisor
I supported
Chairman
it, and I don't
Hernandez
deny
by
supporting
himself,
it.
or Tiffany by himself, or former Supervisor Dirks by herself. So I just, I know we're being a little ambiguous here, and that's why I wonder, County Council, is there anything, there's nothing we can say about, the direction part of it, not the context of it, but that's clear, there's, because I don't, and I especially don't want Supervisor Gonzalez feeling personally attacked. The goal here is really for all of us to come together and, and I know we've been working hard at, any differences we might have on issues. We respect one another, and that's really what this is all about. But if there's nothing you can say, that's fine. I just want to make that clear that it wasn't like some personal issue or anything.
I think that probably, unless the board wanted to give direction about any addition statements that we wanted to say, I think that that's probably, adequate right now.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Okay, got it,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we can discuss after if you'd
Great.
like.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So if we can repeat the motion and
Just simply to continue this item till sometime in early 2023, giving the new supervisors probably a little bit of time. I don't know if you want to come into your first meeting, and but that's that's up to staff, I guess, to figure that
We'll
out.
work
Maybe
with
working
the
with them
new
and
board.
getting their comfort level.
And I'll second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 5-0. So 4.5.
I believe
Those are
those
both.
were heard
Was that
to
the
both
motion
at the
for
same
both?
time.
Yeah.
4.4 and
Both of them.
4.5. were-
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
just
So
on
we
the
can
record.
go on to 4.8. Supervisor Tiffany.
Okay, this one's going to be an easy one. I'm pretty sure. I have no problems with this impact fee report, but I did have a question. Actually, I had two questions. One had to do with there was a place where the interest was shown as a negative. Treasurer Casillas already answered that question for me, but maybe the other board members, it's required, and it's essentially a paper loss is the way I guess I would view it. But I had a question about that. I don't know if you want to address that, Joe Paul.
Yes, I wanted to let you know, the board know that under the GASB rules, especially specifically GASB 31 and now 72 and 79, they're all talking about tightening up reporting and disclosure requirements as it relates to investments. In this case, the reason why you're seeing a negative there is because the investments are being brought to fair market value. And procedurally, we bring them to fair market value on June 30th of every year. And so basically, for financial statement reporting, we must report it as if we had, realized the losses. They really are unrealized because we haven't,
Right.
sold
I mean,
the instruments.
we're primarily talking about bonds, and we keep them till maturity. So really, the reality is there is no loss, but the requirements require us to show it as where we stand. Just like if we have an investment portfolio and on paper there's been a loss on a stock or something, but until you sell it, you don't have the loss.
If for some reason we had some catastrophic event and we needed to liquidate our investments, well, that's really the reality. that would be the number that
Right.
we present.
Right.
And so normally, and it's true that Dulce pointed out that you don't normally see that in the impact fee accounts. And that's because in previous years, the amounts, the fair market value adjustment amounts have been immaterial. Very, they're small amounts in relation to the total investments. But this year was different. This year, the fair market value adjustment was 5.3 million. And that's because, investments were made, longer term investments were made when the rates were much lower. And so in order, if theoretically, if we had to dispose of our investments on 6/30, well, the value of our investments would be valued at $6.3 million less. But that, of course, is only a theoretical discussion, it's not reality.
Right, and I do want to point out, I think, for the public, I mean, these are still very conservative investments.
They're very conservative.
Very, very conservative. It's just that, obviously, this last year has been a very, very difficult one, both in stocks, which we're not in, but also in bonds. And with the rising interest rates, it impacts bonds.
Exactly. So because inflation has, rules the day, these investments that were made at lower, lower interest earnings, they're not valued as much. So we have to take a discount. Basically realize a discount. We generally used to only do these immaterial, recognize these immaterial markdowns in the general fund because it just wasn't worth the effort to spread them amongst all the funds. But because of the large material amount, we felt, and it's really the proper way to do it. You really should, it really should be distributed amongst all the funds, and that's why you saw it in there.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Mr. Chair, I also, and I don't know if there's other questions this issue, but I have one other question on the impact fees.
Make it easy, Bob.
It has to do with basically when the next Nexus study would be done, and Dulce, I know you talked to me, but the last one for the traffic impact fees was 2016.
So COG oversees traffic impact fees. So for that one, COG would take the lead on updating the traffic impact fee. The county is responsible for all our other county ones, and we are currently working with the consultant, Will Dan, and they early next year we're hoping to get the Nexus report from them and recommendations on increasing certain impact fees or possibly decreasing based on their findings. So.
Okay, yeah, I just want to be sure we're up to date on impact fees, and I don't know if you can speak to, from COG's standpoint, or are those traffic impact fees going to be looked at and updated?
Yeah, I can certainly. Well, we have a meeting tonight, so
okay,
something
to consider.
Bring
I'm just
that up.
bringing
Yeah.
that up. Okay, that was it. I'm in support of it, and unless there's other questions, I will make a motion.
If I could clarify the motion, in the staff recommendation, it says approve the impact fee report. That should actually be accept and receive the impact fee report. It comes back the first meeting in January to actually approve it. It has to be available for 15 days before.
So this is the first revision?
Yes, this is the first reading of
Okay,
it, kind
I'll
of.
make a motion that we accept and receive the impact fee report.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I understand that COG is starting to look at the impact fees, and they might bring a consultant or an RFP for.
That'll be a big conversation. Thank you. 5-0.
Okay.
So 4.18.
Yes, I asked for that one to be pulled, and my only concern was I received phone calls from employees and union officials asking why we can't we can't plan our vacations without this approval. And I said, I'm not trying to stop it. I just wanted to make sure there was phone coverage. And Henny and I spoke on Tuesday, so I have no objections. I just wanted to make sure. I know that at one point, whether it was last year or 2 years ago, there was an issue about the community trying to reach out and get a hold of some departments during the time frame where we had taken the break. And I've been assured that there is phone coverage, and so my withdrawal has been pulled. Okay, so I'll make a move that we go ahead and approve the resolution for the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors authorizing the hours of operations from December 2022 holiday closure period.
Adopting, yes.
Okay, oh, adopt, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Adopt the resolution.
I'll second that.
Is there, did you want to share something real quick, Henny, before I?
Oh, sorry.
No problem. I'm going to be sending out a reminder once it's approved to department heads and then for staff, especially like out of voicemail, out of office on their emails, any voicemails that they have that go straight to their lines. So to make sure everything's up to date, as well as putting the notifications on any entry, point of entry in any departments for the public so that they see. And then also anything in case of emergency. When it comes to risk or any sensitive HR issues, I'll still have my phone and my laptop with me, so I'll be available. So I just wanted to call that out.
Okay. Thank you, Henny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you. 4.32. I believe that was
that's
Supervisor
mine,
Gonzalez.
yeah.
Oh, no, it was Supervisor Tiffany. I mean, Cosmic.
Yes, sorry, let me just pull it up quick.
I thought you were 4.35.
This is the Santana Ranch. This is, yeah.
Oh.
Is it? Wait, I don't have the agenda.
4.32, yeah, because we have it, this is an old agenda
Sorry,
item.
I'm trying to find the.
I think I pulled that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, because I was just wondering why the fee went up. It's now 1,849,000. Why was the differential? Looks like it increased by 849, but that's just a significant amount. So I was just asking for the why behind it.
Yeah, valid question. Thank you, Supervisor. Each of there's 5 different consultants were anticipated to utilize a budget of $1 million for design, soft costs, for various projects. A few of our consultants, because of all the different projects we have that were approved to move forward by the board, they've actually maxed out, the county maxed out the $1 million using, there's probably 30 different projects or more maybe that are ongoing for design. And so we've utilized the on-call design budget. And so to keep the projects moving forward that were approved in June for design, we actually need these additional funds for 2 of the bridge projects, speed attenuation project, and the Pinoch Road New Idria project design. So does that kind of clarify?
It's needed.
It's
needed. Okay. All right, I just wanted to hear from you, but thank you. All right, so then I'll move that we approve the contract amendment with Kimley Horn Associates, perform on-call design and engineering services in the amount not to exceed $849,000 for a total amount not to exceed $1,849,000. And authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. 4.35, Supervisor Cosmicki.
Yeah, just a quick question. The final reimbursement was determined at 2.152 or 151 million. Just because it's a large dollar amount, I know you provided some information in the staff report, but can you just provide a brief overview of the process so that there's assurances in the public eye as far as that, this being a, and Steve Loop is very highly regarded by me. So I have full faith in Steve. It's more just explaining to the public so that we know that this is a very precise calculation without any sort of, piecemeal discretion that may or may not be under your umbrella.
Yeah, this is a great question, Supervisor, and actually for our future supervisors. So to provide background, as you requested, basically all project developments are required when they move forward to pay impact fees. And those impact fees are calculated based on the size of their project and what they're building, and that's essentially their fair share to contribute to the county to help us sustain infrastructure and other things as well. And so, for example, a fair share calculated for Santana Ranch for each home that they built for their traffic impact fee, just that fee. Their fair share was about $4,000 per lot, and they have 1,000 lots approximately allocated to the project. So they will be paying as their fair share $4 million into an impact fund pot of money. And then there's, as Dulce just noted, there's a study that said, okay, the traffic impacts that we think are benefit the whole county need to be built at some point in time. And if someone builds those projects that benefit the whole county, then folks that build those specific improvements will get reimbursed out of those impact fees that were provided by the other fair shares of all the projects. So the ones that are adjacent to Santana Ranch, there's one lane of traffic along their frontage, a whole lane, because Fairview Road ultimately is supposed to be 4 lanes up to a certain point, a little bit past McCloskey, but it's supposed to be 4 lanes as the plan today. And so that one lane was part of the benefit to the community that a lot of projects, like subdivision projects, if they're kind of outside the county limits, they'll just build their frontage. They'll build sidewalks and make improvements to their lane. Well, if you're on Fairview, you're actually required to build an extra lane. And so that is part of the reason they're getting refunded or reimbursed from that pot of money. Additionally, the signal there, as Fairview becomes 4 lanes, ideally, you want to have a signal or maybe a roundabout or some other kind of implementation to assist with folks that need to cross 4 lanes of traffic. And so they built the signal there. However, they didn't get reimbursed, as an example, for their leg of the signal. However, the other 3 legs, they're getting reimbursed for that as part of the traffic impact study. So is that?
Yeah, and there's obviously, and I saw the breakdown of the very precise numbers that you provided in the graphic, and so these are all calculations that were A, B, C, D, and
Correct, and there was approximately 260 pages of backup support, and the senior engineer that works for the county and myself, we went through 3 iterations with Santana Ranch, and actually their first iteration was actually slightly higher than the 2.1. It was actually about 2.5, and we met with them, we refined that, it brought it down to 2.3. They actually found a couple more things that they thought, well, that's more on Santana's, responsibility, not so much the TIF, because there's some little gray areas. So then we brought it down to 2.15. So there was 3 iterations from 2.5 million down to 2.15 million.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Chair, could I ask, since Steve is up there, and it's my last shot at you, Steve.
My phone's always open.
But a question, because I've had this brought up to me. So since we're talking about what's been done with Santana Ranch, there's we have the median there and curbs. And I've had some citizens come at me, why the hell is that there? And I'm assuming it has to do with, left-hand turn lanes and this and that. But there's 2 lanes and, you got a curb and it seems to be very tight. There's also, so my question is, can you kind of explain what's going on there? And is that eventually all going to be reslurried and striped or whatever? I've also had people comment to me that, it doesn't look very good. So I'm just curious if you can address that.
I'll address the latter and then the former question. The latter part, we have a punch list item. There are some areas we found some ponding and where maybe the pavement isn't exactly where it needs to be, and so we'll work with them to fix those areas. Regarding the median, if you think about some of the speeds and folks on Fairview, in my humble opinion, a raised median provides an extra level of protection, whereas if you're someone, say you're driving southbound on Fairview and you want to turn left into the project, you have more protection physically and from horizontal separation to have that vertical median there, versus folks that don't have that, and so it just provides a little level of safety. Not to mention, it was actually part of their specific plan when the project was approved that they would have a raised median, which I do think is a good idea, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Thank you. I appreciate
Awesome. Okay, so what's the will of the board?
A move to approve as recommended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. On to 4.36.
Yes, I had a question on this one for the CSA. So the increase in the 47,000, how is that being divided between the 3 CSAs? And do they know they're being assessed this fee? And has there been any issue regarding that?
Correct. So we're speaking to CSAs in regards to an extension of a Bracewell contract for essential services for water treatment. So as we know, the water system has always been a point of contention amongst the county. And before I get too far into the specifics, I'd like to kind of, since I see some supervisor-elects, and to reiterate for any board members at large who are new to the CSA program, I know Supervisor Zanger's got a few in his district as well. Apart from Supervisor Vitello and current Supervisor Hernandez, each and every one of you have at least one county special district, be it a Melrose like Santana Ranch, Bennett Ranch, or Sunnyside Estates, or CSAs. There are about 50 at the moment, 9 tax zones, so we've got about 60 special districts within the county of San Benito, approximately, all encompassing essential services. The legislative intent initially of CSAs is a unique concept, and one I'm actually quite a fan of in regards to government. It brings service parity, or at least brings a level of parity to county areas for municipal government services comparable to that of a city. And in that way, they function with their own budget, their own levies, which are property fees added onto a property tax bill, either ad valorem or in conjunction as a line item ad. So essentially, these districts, each one of themselves maintains their own budget, maintains their own levy, and are fully unique and independent of the general fund expenditure. So that's the real beauty. It's literally the residents in a given area taking care of their specific needs with their own funds as administered through the government, in this case myself as the CSA. So to address this, there are 3 CSAs that currently utilize specific water treatment plant. That's CSA 50, Dunville Estates, CSA 22, Cielo Vista, and of course Stonegate out near Tres Pinos, CSA 31. In this case, this is a function of current contract holder, Bracewell Engineers, who have been servicing both the sewage needs for Cielo Vista, on-site water treatment, and well support over at Dunville. And Supervisor Tiffany is well aware that specifically Stonegate has had some serious draws, and all these come against the contract sitting with Bracewell. So what we're going through right now, and if you caught a peek at me and taking off my giant yellow suit with a pile of papers, those are RFP bids that I'm kind of currently reviewing for a renewal contract for whoever wins the bidding process. That details soon to follow at a coming thing once that has been completed and decided. So what this extension sits before your board today is to extend the contract services to provide my department, my agency, time to do its due diligence to have a proper contract replacement, to make sure that funds and essential services like water treatment at Stonegate and Dunville and sewage at Cielo Vista remain ongoing and there's no service disruption for these vital services.
I guess, how is it being divided though between the 3? Because I know each of the CSAs have different properties, units, and so it's not like it's a common denominator. So how are you dividing up the expenses?
Correct. So right now, we're just covering the shortfall of existing invoices and prospective general operations for the monthly thing to extend to about March. We're not anticipating needing that long of a line. Like I said, I'm hoping to bring a decision to your board before February for a new contract.
And for clarification, if perhaps what the supervisor is also asking is, we bill those services individually for each of those 3 CSAs, and it's not just a third, it's the cost incurred for each of those individual CSAs.
Okay.
Correct.
So you wouldn't be able to give me like an approximate what each homeowner's going to be looking at then, because it's not going to be divided evenly.
No. If you're so essentially, these CSAs are individual entities, and they're invoiced under their own accounts. Now, they're paid from these accounting entities through and funded by the CSA levies, which affect every resident living within this special district. So it's all equal. They're invoiced individually, as Steve mentioned. However, the fee stays the same, and that's a unique topic for another day relating to Prop 218 and adjusting services and
Right.
fees associated.
And I
But I'd be
understand the
happy to go into that
CSAs,
if
yep,
you'd like.
I'm just kind of concerned. At this point, none of those are in my district, but in 2024, the Dunville will be. So just in case future District 5 residents reach out to me, I just wanted to have an idea of what they're going to be looking at.
Absolutely.
That was it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might,
Supervisor
since you're
Tiffany.
standing up there, Reed, so you don't need to go into the whole thing, but I am curious, where do you stand as far as, the 218s? I know that, as we know, there's a number of CSAs that are, frankly, not collecting enough money to really provide the proper services, but there has to be a vote. And I know you've been evaluating these CSAs, so what's the timetable on that?
Typically, the timetable legislatively is built in about every 5 to 10 years to conduct a Prop 218 on post-Prop 13 funded CSAs. That process has been, unfortunately, due to staffing, the Great Recession, and kind of current levels of focus and problems in the community. The last one was conducted in 2009, so we are very, very, as a county, very, very behind schedule to address and focus on some of these. There's a whole step in legislative requirements and legal as well to get these Prop 218s and the ball rolling. In an ideal world, it would take about 24 to 36 months to conduct these. We're a little behind. I'd like to blame staffing, but that's a circular logic train, because to increase my budget, I need to conduct 218s to appropriately allocate funding for staff and hiring. So right now it's in process. It is of my highest concern. It's literally revenue. So if you think of the CSAs as a separate entity or even a mini county within themselves, there's budget, there's revenue and expenses, and I need my expenses are pretty dramatic compared to many revenues. So it is definitely the highest priority to get back on that kind of higher end planning and management, rather than the kind of day-to-day problems that can come about having nearly 60 plus district, with some of which we can have pretty dramatic life-altering services, water treatment being a prime example. And bringing us back to the item at bar can take a lot of time, staff time and analysis. So.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
I'm good?
Can I get
Okay.
a motion?
I'll go ahead and move to approve per staff recommendation.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Yay.
So down to our last item, 3.6, Supervisor Kozmicki.
Do you want to do it up there?
Sure. I don't want to make it a big.
So as is tradition at the county, today is the final meeting for our chairman, Peter Hernandez, along with, of course, Supervisor Tiffany. So I think, almost in a sense, this is a shared recognition, I believe. And I just want to say that Chair Hernandez, I think, has done an admirable job as our chairman for the last 6 months or so. When I think of the board chair position in San Benito County and a community like ours, the primary responsibilities really are to make sure the meetings run productively, to have a strong grasp of protocol, to work hard with staff on setting agendas and clarifying, agenda items, making sure that all of us are respectful toward one another, and ensuring that that our business as a county happens smoothly and efficiently at these meetings. And above all, I strongly believe that the chair, as much as there were some concerns, about Chair Hernandez, because he has he's a strongly principled individual, principled leader. This is not a position that's meant to be a bully pulpit of sorts. And I just am very proud of Chairman Hernandez that, to me, he fulfilled all of those objectives. I think our meetings were productive. He had respect for everyone. He gave everyone an equal voice on the board, and I think he did a great job. So thank you to Chair Hernandez.
Thank you, everybody. I know we're all in a hurry to get out. What can I say besides it's been an honor? For me, it's a position of public service. I always say I hesitate to call myself a leader, because to me, and it's as is my conviction that I got to learn to honor God first, and then honor my neighbor, right? Love my neighbor as myself. So that is kind of the standard that I try to live by, and I try to do that on the dais as the chair. It's funny because with the whole sentiment of unity, that means there's a lot of moving parts to unity, right? Because everybody has their own individual opinions, and managing dialogue and conversations are not easy. But to me, facilitating good conversation all starts with respecting each other's voice, even in spite of opposition. And I know that I've gotten a lot of it myself, but I never take it personal, right? People have a right to their opinion. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment right of free speech. I believe it's there, even if it's against my own personal interests. I believe in the power of it. So, and that's the way that our county is going to advance. So I'm praying and believing that you guys are going to be focused, that you're going to position a chair that's going to take an attitude of unifying the board and ultimately unifying our county, because I know that even with administrative staff, there is a lot of time and energy put in to be able to be effective, and learning to be able to work with key stakeholders in our community. So that being said, I'm really proud of being the fact that you guys even gave me this position to delegate conversation, and ultimately to be able to manage the interests of the county. So it's been an honor to serve, and you'll see me back again. God bless you guys. Thank you. Okay, so that being the last item, if I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Bob.
All right.
Happy
Thank you, Peter.
holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas,
John.
everybody.
Peter, it's been a pleasure.
You're gonna miss you all.